I'm Allie Silver, and I'm going to be talking about DNA profiling and why I believe it helps to convict more criminals. So just a little background on what DNA is. So it stands for deoxyribonucleic acid, which determines the inherited structure of a cell's protein. And it's easy to obtain someone's DNA from a crime scene, whether it's through strands of hair, skin, saliva, or other bodily fluids such as semen. So DNA is composed of nucleotide monomers that are stabilized by a hydrogen bond that links them into pairs. And these pairs attach themselves to a sugar phosphate backbone to create the double helix that you can see over on the right. So, like I said, it's made up of nucleotide monomers, so that consists of 4 bases. You have adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. And with DNA, adenine only pairs up with thymine, and guanine only pairs up with cytosine, and that's how the DNA is formed. So according to the United States National Library of Medicine, DNA profiling is the technique used to establish a link between biological evidence and a suspect in a criminal investigation. So DNA profiling is a comparative technique. So simply taking DNA from a crime scene does not say anything about the suspect. It's the similarities found when you run the DNA sample through a DNA database and it matches with a suspect's profile. So 2 of the most popular methods of DNA profiling are the polymerase chain reactions and the short tandem repeat analysis. So the most used method for DNA profiling is the short tandem repeat analysis, or STR for short. And this is used to compare specific regions of DNA of 2 or more samples. So these repeated sections are usually 2 to 8 base pairs in length. And because they're so small that scientists are able to use even like severely degraded samples with this analysis. So this testing determines how many base pairs are in the repeat of a given section, and it compares it to another sample. But with this analysis, results are more accurate if you use more than one location on the DNA strand. So I believe that DNA profiling does help to convict more criminals. I believe that this technology is vital for ensuring accuracy and fairness within our justice system. And according to the University of Utah's Genetic Science Learning Center, DNA profiling is only used in less than 1% of criminal cases. However, it has a high rate of helping convict suspects in many of the most violent crimes. One example of this was found in an article in the New York Times, and it was a man named Gary Ridgway, who was known as the Green River Killer, and he was guilty of raping and murdering over 48 women. However, at the time, there wasn't enough evidence against him. But while these murderers were being investigated, the 2 new methods of DNA profiling were developed. So when DNA was found on one of the victims, it was sent through the DNA database, and because he had a previous record, he was found guilty. Another example of this was in 1999 in New York City, when a female news reporter was threatened and raped in Manhattan, and the DNA that was picked up from the crime scene didn't match any criminal within the DNA database. However, 2 months later, a man was forced to provide DNA for an attempted robbery. So when the DNA was put into the database, it matched the DNA from the 1999 crime, and he was found guilty. A third case involved 2 teenage girls that were raped and murdered on different occasions in nearby English villages. And semen was obtained from both of these crime scenes. And when it was run through the database, it excluded one of the main suspects and it matched up with another one. And the man that was actually found guilty had originally tried to get his friend to provide a DNA sample on his behalf, but when he was presented with the evidence against him, he pled guilty. So some would argue that DNA profiling is unreliable and that it has the potential to wrongfully accuse an individual. However, according to something published by the government of Victoria in Australia, these DNA tests are highly sensitive and they can use the shortest of DNA sequences to find a match. So like I said before, these DNA strands can withstand contamination and still be utilized effectively. So another benefit to DNA profiling is that it can help with old unsolved cases. So when someone commits a crime, their DNA is put into a DNA database. So if another crime is committed and some form of DNA is found, there's a possibility that it matches the DNA from within the database. And some might ask, well, what are the odds that the DNA sample will match a criminal within the database? But according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, 71% of violent offenders are likely to become repeat offenders within a 5-year period. So in cases of rape and murder, it's more likely that a suspect will be found and proven guilty. So some would argue that there is a substantial backlog of unanalyzed DNA. However, according to the U.S. Department of Justice, improvements are being made so that DNA databases can be more efficient. And so with this funding, the crime laboratory capacity will increase, and technology is constantly improving. So this will help to save potential victims from these crimes and violence by repeated offenders. So in conclusion, DNA profiling has some really great advantages. It's reliable and it's fair, and it has a great success rate over the years. And I think that if these DNA databases were to grow and kind of form into a worldwide database, it could be useful to help solve crimes in our own country as well as abroad. These are my sources.